chilling moments. A family's terrifying encounter at a roadside hideout. When I was 14 and my brother was 22, my dad and I were driving across America. Even though it was late, we were still rested and awake. We pulled over at the first rest area in 400 miles as we were traveling along a highway and realized we needed gas and a break. In addition to a van full of adolescents on a road trip, there were 2 young men standing still outside of a little gray automobile that was parked in front of us at the gas station's pump. When we arrived, everything seemed off. We'd been traveling for days and had passed by numerous rest spots at night without once feeling threatened. I stayed in the car while my father and brother went inside. The teenagers fled quickly after claiming to be frightened and unable to get the pump to function. The 2 males had not moved at all as I was looking at the car in front of us. 0 inches. They were not conversing. Their phones were off. They were motionless, simply standing there. The 2 men turned to stare at us slowly while without moving or turning the rest of their bodies. And we all noticed the same thing. They had eyes as dark as pitch and hollow. My brother and father sprinted back out to the car to meet them. Actually bare. Nothing but a void. Not dark, not reflecting any light at all. We left quickly and didn't stop till we reached the following city. What was the worst part of the whole experience? Any map we looked at didn't show the location. We knew exactly where to look on the highway, but neither Google Maps nor any of our printed maps could help us locate it. Even when we queried the locals about the Erie gas station that was off to the side of the road, we just got blank stares in return. Since then, we've driven on the interstate, and there isn't a rest area. Haunting reunion. Psychiatric nurse's shocking experience with a returning patient. This early in my career, as a psychiatric nurse, I worked at a residential mental health hospital. One of our patients was an elective mute, meaning that he was unable to speak but had no medical conditions that prevented him from doing so. Even though he was about 6 feet tall, he appeared to be fairly normal when he spoke earlier in his life. He had grown up in the Deep East and enlisted in the military at the age of 19. During the night, he just disappeared. He was flagged as a WOL before eventually being listed as missing and deceased. In my region of the Southeast, 10 years later, a 6-foot-tall guy announced to the receptionist, "My name is Benjamin Wilson," not the real name, "and I have been buried for a decade." That was the last thing he ever said. He was dressed in the exact clothes that had been described as being on him the night he disappeared, but he was covered in dust. He had no identification on him and had not utilized his social security number. They may have used fingerprints to identify him, though, the family was informed. But they said that since they had already mourned their deceased loved one, whoever was claiming to be him could not possibly be. They insisted on never being contacted again. Benjamin moved his mouth in what appeared to be speech or muttering during the course of every day, but no sound came out. He had a creepy habit of flinging his head back and laughing wildly with his mouth open, but not even a breath could be heard. If I spoke to him, he seemed to listen because he occasionally threw his head back in that way that mimicked laughter. He was given a variety of drugs, but they had no noticeable beneficial or negative effects on him, because Benjamin would only grin and pace until instructed to stop. Occupational therapy was ineffective. On the final day that I was there, Benjamin was pacing around the parking lot and throwing his head back as if to laugh. Afterwards, I questioned whether I had really been dealing with a ghost all along. After all these years, I still have no idea. Chilling encounter. taxi driver's terrifying tale of a psychopath passenger in Colorado. In Colorado, in the 1960s, my friend's grandfather experienced this. Glenn is the name my friend's grandfather has given him. Glenn, who had recently left Vietnam, worked as a taxi driver and put in long hours to provide for his family. When he observed a man sticking up his thumb on the side of the road one time, while traveling down a route with trees nearby, Glenn halted the cab so the man could enter. The man, according to Glenn, appeared short, had long, unkempt hair, a bushy beard, and an odd accent. The man said, "Hey man, thanks for stopping. You're a fine man," in Glenn's memory. The man said nearest town, please, when Glenn asked him where he wanted to travel. Sure, Glenn replied, and he accelerated. The passenger in the back of the taxi began to talk to Glenn. Glenn said he had a very odd feeling about the man but didn't give it much thought. He asked the man, "Where are you heading?" And the man replied, "I'm going to see some family." Glenn remarked, "That's nice. It's always nice to visit some family." And the man chuckled and said, "It is for sure, man." After the chat concluded, he arrived after 30 minutes. Glenn replied by telling the stranger his name when the man asked. The man was asked what was his by Glenn. "My name is Daryl," the man said, and they both bid each other farewell. Glenn sped off without giving it any thought. But it wasn't until he saw Daryl on the news months later that he realized the man he had picked up was none other than infamous cult leader Daryl Kurt. When Glenn read the news, he was troubled to learn that he was riding in a car with a psychopath. He never mentioned it to anyone since he was afraid that they would believe he was fabricating or lying. In the months before his death in 2022, Glenn told my friend and his family the tale of his encounter with Daryl Kurt. Glenn passed away in 2022. Every time Glenn saw or thought of Daryl, he felt a cold go up his spine. Some people might assume that Glenn made this up, but he claimed he doesn't care and that the incident will haunt him forever.